For everyone that hates the Rivers of Blood users in PvP and wants to beat them at their own game, this is for you. They will not see this coming at all. Alternatively, if you're just looking to rinse a boss easily and spamming Rivers of Blood is getting a bit boring for you, this is also for you. Although it works like Rivers of Blood, this new Rivers of Poison build has enough variety to keep the game fun and keep your PvP opponents guessing. And here is exactly what you need. So firstly, let's talk stats. For this build, you're going to want to focus on Arcane for that poison to pack a punch. Then Dex, as your weapon scales primarily with Dex. And finally Mind. You don't have to go crazy with Mind. I personally stack it just because I'd like to have more health flasks and not have to rely on refilling my FP every 2 seconds. Try to have a decent level of Vigor too if you're going to be going into PvP fights. It also doesn't hurt to have a few points in Endurance. Everything else stat-wise is up to you. For this build, you're going to want the Nagakiba Katana. It's the insanely long one with more range than a bow and arrow. It's actually super simple to find. It isn't hidden behind a boss fight or the far end of an endgame area. It's literally right at the beginning of the game. From the first step site of Grace, simply run over to Murkwater Cave. You'll be invaded by an NPC. If you leave it long enough, a hunter NPC called Yura will spawn in to help. After killing the invader, Yura will be standing against the wall to the north. Kill him and he'll drop the Nagakiba. You're going to need 2 of these. There are a few ways to do this. If you're in New Game Plus, it's likely that you've picked one up in your travels before, so you'll simply need to head over and grab it again. If not, we have a video on duplicating weapons and runes. I'll link that in the description. And we have a Discord filled with hundreds of Elden Ring players looking to duplicate, trade, and fight bosses together. So definitely go and get some help there. Now that you've got a pair of swords taller than you, let's talk Ash of War and affinities. So the Nagakiba actually does a good amount of bleed damage, which is a great little boost. The high arcane we talked about earlier is going to help boost that, as well as the poison you'll be adding later. For Ashes of War, put double slash on your right hand. This will imitate the exact movement that the Rivers of Blood does. For the affinity, you're going to choose poison, obviously. And on your left, this is going to be your secret weapon that catches enemies off guard. Equip the spinning slash Ash of War and choose the poison affinity again. This is great for enemies that try to close the gap and get real close. Simply one-hand your left Nagakiba and spam the spinning slash Ash of War for an easy kill. You can find the double slash Ash of War in Celia Understair. Just climb on top of the route that spans the town and run to the west. You'll see one of those bugs, just kill it, and then boom, you've got it. Then for the spinning slash Ash of War, it's sold by Knight Bernal at the War Master's Shack for 1,200 runes. You can find the shack here. That high level arcane and dex we talked about earlier is really going to come in handy for both Ashes of War. For your head, you'll want to use the Mushroom Crown. This boosts damage when poison is in the vicinity. It will boost your damage by 10%. The Mushroom Crown can be found on a corpse hanging off of a pillar ruin in the southeastern corner of Lake Rot, right here. For the chest, hands and feet, you're going to want something to give you a decent poise level without causing you to fat roll. I went with the Crucible Knight Armor, but anything will do. The reason for the high poise is due to being vulnerable when doing the spinning slash attack. However, not that many players will be able to hit you because this attack is more likely to break enemy poise anyway. All of these talismans are useful and contribute towards insane amounts of damage, so don't skip any. Firstly, we have Radagon's Saw Seal. This gives a +5 to the attributes Vigor, Endurance, Strength, and Dex. The trade-off here is that you take an extra 15% damage, but you're not going to get hit very much. You can get a hold of the Saw Seal at Fort Faroth in Caelid right here. If you don't like the idea of 15% extra damage, I'd suggest swapping out Radagon's Saw Seal for Millicent's Prosthesis. This boosts successive attacks as well as dex. You can get this by killing Millicent at the Windmill Village site of Grace during her questline, or siding against her at the end of her questline. Secondly, we've got the Kindred of Rot's Exaltation. This gives a 20% boost to attacks when poison or rot is in the vicinity. Spoiler alert, there will always be poison or rot in the vicinity. You can get the Kindred of Rot's Exaltation from the Kindred of Rot in Seathwater Cave, located here. Then we've got the Shard of Alexander, which greatly raises the attack power of skills, which again, we're always going to be using the skills. To get the Shard of Alexander, you'll need to do his quest line. The final location for Alexander will be in the crumbling Farah Missoula. I won't spoil how you get it, but have fun. Finally, you'll want the Rotten Winged Sword Insignia, which greatly raises attack power with successive attacks. The attack boost will start at 6% but keep climbing to a whopping 22% with each hit. The Rotten Winged Sword Insignia can be earned by siding with Millicent at the end of her quest in the Haligtree. For your Great Rune, go for Godric's Rune, as this boosts all of your attributes by 5, and you really can't go wrong with that. The Stone Barb Cracked Tear is incredibly important to use here, as it helps with breaking enemy poise, and whenever you use the spinning slash attack, this is going to double your chances. The second tier is even more important, and it ties all of this together beautifully. The Thorny Cracked Tear makes consecutive attacks grow stronger the longer they continue, which is exactly what you're going to be doing the whole time. This will stack on top of the near 100% damage boost you're getting from everything else. I'm pretty sure there are more intricate and impressive ways that these items are stacking together, but I don't have a calculator to hand and you don't care, so let's just say big damage. So how does this build work? Well, before you walk into the boss room or start swinging your sword at an enemy player, drink your Wondrous Physic and you're ready to go. Start spamming L2 for PlayStation or LT for Xbox. This will use the double slash Ash of War. It hits the enemy with an attack that strikes them 4 to 5 times, which triggers everything that boosts successive attacks. The poison caused by the swords will also kick in, and that will trigger everything that boosts attack power when poison is in the vicinity. Your high level arcane will then boost that, and the small amount of blood loss on the swords. And then, your secret weapon, switching to your left blade and spamming the spinning slash Ash of War, will also trigger everything, but it will also break the enemy's poise, which is made even easier thanks to the Stone Barbed Cracked Tear. And then spamming it again will likely kill your opponent before they even know what hit them. If they do manage to get out alive, they'll be heavily poisoned. With each strike you do, the more damage you'll do, and everything will continue stacking, so it'll only be a matter of time before you win the fight. And as a very helpful tip to anybody that has stuck with me through this guide, when playing on your own, use the Mimic Tier Summon with this build. The fact the Summon has all of this equipment as well doubles the rate in which you kill bosses. Not only are they a great distraction for letting you get in those extra hits, but they're great at keeping the poison going for your attack buffs. Enjoy the build and have fun. Until now, sleep builds in Elden Ring have been a little underwhelming. You have the Sword of St. Trina that, let's be honest, sucks. It gives an output of around 60 sleep damage, so you'd have to dual wield if you wanted anything even slightly decent, which would obviously mean running through the game again. There is also a sleep bow build that I do see a lot of, but who really wants to use a bow in Elden Ring? Yeah. So let's talk everything you're going to need for this build. Stats. Arcane, Arcane, Arcane. I don't care what else you put your points into, whatever your Arcane level is, it's not enough.
Pump those numbers up, those are rookie numbers in this racket.
Weapons. You are going to want to get yourself 2 of the Ripple Crescent Halberds. This weapon scales completely with Arcane and when maxed out has an S tier scale ranking. To get this weapon, you can find a group of 3 Albinoric frogmen who wield it at the first ruin just to the east of the fallen ruins of the lake, Site of Grace in Liurnia. The drop rate is pretty decent. Obviously, if you've cranked up your arcane stat like I told you to, then you'll likely get 2 of the weapons in your first few tries. Armor. For the armor, I use the Mask of Confidence as it boosts arcane by 3. You can obviously use the silver tier mask for an 8-point boost in arcane, but it does cut your physical damage output by 5%. Now, this shouldn't be an issue because our weapons do scale fully with arcane, but you can make that call for yourself. You can get the Mask of Confidence here, and you can get the silver tier mask here. For the rest of the armor, just equip something that offers a decent armor rating without causing you to fat roll. I used Malekith's armor for this, but it is completely up to you. Great Rune. For the Great Rune, we're obviously going with Godric's Great Rune for that extra 5 points in Arcane. Wondrous Physic. In your Wondrous Physic, you're going to want the Thorny Crack tier. This will boost attack power with successive attacks. The good news here is there will always be successive attacks. You can get the Thorny Crack tier here. You will also want the Green Burst Crystal tier. This boosts your stamina recovery, which, due to those successive attacks, you're going to need. You can get a hold of the Green Burst Crystal tier here. Talismans. Firstly, you'll need the Shard of Alexander. This boosts the attack power of skills. To get the talisman, just get to the end of Alexander Warrior Jar's questline. You'll also need Millicent's Prosthesis. This boosts dex and successive attacks. You can get this by getting to the end of Millicent's questline and choosing to kill her. You can actually get it sooner though by killing her when she shows up at the Windmill Village Site of Grace. Next is the Rotten Winged Sword Insignia, which boosts successive attacks as well. You can get this by getting to the end of Millicent's questline and choosing to help her. If you haven't hit New Game Plus and only have one of Millicent's talismans, get the Godskin Swaddling Cloth Talisman instead. The Godskin Talisman restores HP with every successive attack you do, and you can get that talisman right here. Then finally, you'll need the Carrion Filigreed Crest, which lowers FP consumed by skills, and you can get this talisman here. Items. In your quick item menu, you'll need as much soporific grease as you can carry. You can craft this after you get the cookbook from the Isolated Merchant located down the east path after entering the Academy of Rhea Lucaria. He's just here on the map. So how does it work and why are we choosing weapons with sleep grease over weapons that do passive sleep damage? Because the Rippled Crescent Halberd has an S scaling in Arcane, not only do they hit insanely hard when your Arcane level is high, but they also significantly boost the amount of sleep buildup to insane levels. I'm talking 2 hits and it's nap time. And even the enemies that aren't as susceptible to the sleep effect are still affected. Some bosses stand there stunned, leaving just enough time for you to hit them again, which snaps them out of it but then puts them straight back in. You have 2 options for hitting the enemies here, L1 for PlayStation or LB for Xbox to hit them with both of your weapons. This is usually what puts the enemy to sleep the quickest. Then once they're out for the count, follow up with 2 taps of the Halberd's spinning skill for big damage. This works especially well in PvP. As well as the crazy 2-hit sleep damage, these things hit hard. Once you've used your Wondrous Physic, these 3 different items begin stacking again and again with successive attacks, so definitely don't sleep on this build. Now go destroy some unsuspecting players in PvP. There are plenty of builds out there in Elden Ring. Some of them overpowered, some of them, well, useless. But no other build can come close to how much damage you get using this one. Just be sure to get every item in this list, as each item works in harmony with the other and they all begin stacking, making you more powerful with each swing. So firstly, let's talk stats. These are my stats. Obviously you don't need to copy them completely, but it's worth putting as much as you can into Arcane and Vigor, with Mind and Dex being a secondary thought. Everything else is up to you. For this build, you're going to want the Scavenger's Curved Sword. This is actually an incredibly simple weapon to find. It isn't hidden behind a boss or a ridiculous labyrinth of a dungeon. It's just outside, sitting on a dead body, and you can find it right here. You're going to need 2 of these. There are a few ways to do this. If you're in New Game Plus, it's likely that you would have picked one up in your travels before, so you'll simply need to head over and grab it again. If not, we have a video on duplicating weapons and runes. I'll link it in the description. And we have a Discord filled with hundreds of Elden Ring players looking to duplicate, trade, and fight bosses together, so definitely get some help in there. Now that you've got your curved swords, let's talk Ash of War and Infinities. So the curved sword already does bleed damage, which is great. The high arcane we talked about earlier is going to help give that a little boost too. So for Ashes of War, I put Bloodhound Step on my right and Seppuku on my left. A lot of people would argue Seppuku should be on both, but I like to zip around using this build, especially when fighting the bigger enemies. You will thank me later when you do this. For affinities, you're going to want to choose a cult for both weapons. This means that your swords will now scale with arcane. That high level arcane is really going to come in handy. For your head, you'll want to use the white mask. This boosts damage when blood loss is in the vicinity. This boosts your damage by 10%.
To get the white mask, you'll need to do Vare's quest line and be rewarded with the Pure Blood Knight's medal. Use it to teleport and fight the 3 invaders in the blood pool. I got the full armor set from the 2nd invader. For the chest, you'll want the Raptor's black feather armor. This enhances jump attacks, which is exactly what we'll be doing. This boosts damage by 15%. You can get the Raptor's black feather armor here. We actually have a video that goes into more detail on where to find it. I will also link that in the description. For your hands and feet, choose anything that offers a nice chunk of damage negation without causing you to fat roll. I went with Malekith's armor here. All of these talismans are useful and contribute towards insane amounts of damage, so don't skip any of these. Firstly, we have the Lord of Blood's Exaltation. This, like the white mask, boosts damage when blood loss is around. This gives us an extra 20% damage. With the white mask, this gives you a total of 30% boosted damage when there's blood loss in the vicinity, which, FYI, will be the whole time. You can get the Lord of Blood's Exaltation here. Secondly, we've got the Claw Talisman. This gives you a 12% boost to jump attacks, which means in total you'll be receiving a 27% bonus every time you jump attack, which, FYI again, will be the whole time. You can find the talisman here. We also have a video that goes into more detail. I'll leave it in the description. The Rotten Winged Sword Insignia, which greatly raises attack power with successive attacks, which, guess what, it's going to be the whole time. The attack boost will start at 6%, but keep climbing to a whopping 22% attack boost with each hit. To get this talisman, you'll need to get to the end of Millicent's questline and help her defeat her sisters. And finally, you'll want Millicent's prosthesis, which boosts dex by 5 and increases attack power with successive attacks. The attack boost starts at 4% and eventually goes up to 11 with each hit. To get this talisman, people seem to think that you need to get to the end of Millicent's questline and kill her, but you can actually get it earlier by killing her at the Windmill Heights Site of Grace after killing the Godskin Apostle. The Green Burst Crystal Tear is incredibly important to use here. It boosts stamina recovery speed, which will help out a lot considering we're going to be jumping and swinging our swords around. The second tier is incredibly important. It ties all of this together beautifully. All of the other equipment you'll be wearing gives just under a 100% boost to your damage. You'll also be using seppuku on top of this. And remember that your weapons are set to the occult affinity, which, if you set your stats right, will already mean crazy damage for your dual swords. Well, this tier, the Thorny Crack tier, makes consecutive attacks grow stronger the longer they continue. Meaning each time you hit the enemy, the damage increases on top of the 100% damage boost from everything else. I'm pretty sure there are more intricate and impressive ways that these items are stacking together, but I don't have a calculator to hand and you don't care. So let's just say big damage. So how does this build work? Well, before you walk into the boss room, get seppuku done, drink your flask of Wondrous Physic, head in and just start jumping at the boss and hitting L1 for PlayStation and LB for Xbox. This hits the boss with an attack that strikes them 4 times, which triggers everything you're wearing related to successive attacks. The seppuku and the natural blood loss of the curved swords will trigger everything you're wearing that boosts attack power when blood loss is in the vicinity. Your high level arcane will boost that as well as the sword's initial damage due to the occult affinity. And then the jump you're doing before the attack is triggering everything you're wearing that boosts jump attacks. With each jump strike, you'll do more and more damage, and it should only take a few hits to take down your enemy. And as a very helpful tip to all the viewers that have stuck with me, use the Mimic Tier Summon with this build. The fact the summon has all of this equipment as well doubles the rate in which you kill the bosses. Not only are they a great distraction for letting you get in those extra hits, but they are great at keeping the blood loss going for your attack buffs. Enjoy the build and have fun.